will not accept more love. Now, if you're watching this, this is going to be important. But if you are only accepting this much love, right? You're accepting this much love, but someone's trying to pour this much love into you, you will only accept the amount of love from them that you give to yourself. What is up, my dear friends, and welcome back to another episode of Honey, I'm Home, a relationship podcast helping you to overcome the obstacles, stopping you from being able to experiencing more joy and more happiness in your life, relationships. And today we're changing it up a little bit. Actually, we are inside of Studio One in One Team Media. I'm actually in the booth where we run all the ones and twos today. So if you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you're listening to the podcast at, check it out. This is a pretty cool setup. It's something simple, but today we're going to be talking about how you can begin to transform your love life through the power of heartfelt conversations and communication. You know, it's a relationship podcast, so of course we're going to be talking about communication and how vital and important it is. But you know what? Most people give you some very basic advice and tips and how-tos on communication and why it's important. We all know it's important, but how do you begin to communicate? There are books, novels, courses, seminars on how to be a great communicator. But let me talk to you about some different key strategies that can help you to not only improve the relationship that you have with yourself, but also with others, because it's usually due to the lack of communication where relationships end up falling apart. Whether it's your love life or your intimate life or friendship, business partnerships, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, everything rises and falls on leadership and communication. And if you want to begin to create a heartfelt relationship with yourself or others, you got to learn how to communicate. And that's what today's topic is going to be about. So stick around to the very end, because I'm going to give you some actionable habits and strategies that you can implement in your own life to help you to begin to create a love life that excites you through powerful communication practices. It's going to be a topic that you're going to want to stick around for. But before we dive into today's podcast episode, my dear friends, hey, time and time again, I get asked the question, Tyler, how do I begin to let go of the past so that I can open my heart up back to a new love? And ultimately, there's only one way that you can begin to do that, and it's through healing. This world has billions of broken hearts in it. Some are more broken than others. That's why therapy and somatic different practices are becoming wildly important, because they understand how broken we are as human beings. And I want to tell you a little bit about the Happiness After Heartbreak course. It is a course designed to help you to win love back. It helps you to begin to open your heart back up to new love so that you don't end up bleeding on a person that never cut you. And if you're struggling to move on, understand that it's a normal process in life, and it can be rather difficult to move on. We don't like moving on from something that we ideally never wanted to let go of. So how do you actually let go and move on from someone that you're in love with and you thought was supposed to be forever, but ended up, not being a forever partner? Well, once again, my course, Happiness After Heartbreak, can help you to begin to move on and create a hope-filled future that excites you and create a new love life so that you can experience a happier, romantic life as well as better relationships, because it stems into that the quality of life you live directly reflects the relationships that you have with yourself, others, God, and everything in between. And if your relationships suck in life, then ultimately your life's going to feel unfulfilled and it's going to feel sucky. So if you're struggling in your relationships, if you're struggling to open up your heart, if you're struggling to move on from a past heartbreak that's keeping you stuck in the past, then Happiness After Heartbreak course can be found in the show notes below. Now on to today's episode, where we're going to be talking about transforming your love life through the power of heartfelt communications. My dear friends, welcome to the podcast. It has been a little over a week since the last time I recorded an episode, and boy, oh boy, did I miss last week. I dropped the ball entirely on you because I was too busy building this company at One Team Media, also helping my clients currently who I'm coaching through their relationship and helping them build emotional resilience. And that's taken a lot of my time. And then, as you can probably hear, my voice is a little bit raspy because I have this crazy cough that kind of took me out of the game last week where I wasn't feeling myself. So if I'm not feeling myself, sometimes I just feel like, you know what, I probably should take care of myself, self-care, rather than pushing myself through to the finish line just to check mark a box. So hear me out. The quality of your life and relationships directly reflect how you communicate with others and, more importantly, with yourself. If you've ever experienced a misunderstanding that distanced you from someone, or you struggled with self-doubt after a harsh self-talk, you've witnessed how powerful communication can be, right? Communication, the way that you talk to yourself, determines how you're going to feel about yourself. It all stems on self-talk. What is self-talk? Self-talk is another form or another word for communication. Whether, it's the conversations we have out loud or the ones that run in our minds in the silence of our own thoughts, these words oftentimes shape our world and our reality, especially when it comes to our love life. Most people struggle with their love life because they struggle with the communication that they have with themselves. And most of the time, the communication that they have toward themselves isn't a very kind, pleasant, or happy, fulfilling words of affirmation and powerful words that help you to realign with your overall self-image. So in this podcast, we're going to be talking about and exploring how transforming your communication, both with yourself and others, can help you to build stronger and more fulfilling relationships and create a love life rooted in understanding, in compassion, with more authentic connection. So you'll also walk away with some actionable habits that will help you to begin to shift you from a heart-centered, fear-based, closed-off heart based communication to more of one that's fueled by love. So you're not so fearful and living in, the fear of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. But let me talk about communication. And basically the first concept is that healing through self-compassion, the power of positive self-talk. Everything stems from the way that you speak to yourself. You teach other people how to treat you based upon how you treat yourself. And the key concept here is that the relationship that you have with yourself sets the foundation for every other relationship in your life. Consistently tearing yourself down with negative self-talk or negative self-communication makes it harder for you to accept love from others, because you will not accept more love. Now, if you're watching this is going to be important. But if you are only accepting this much love, right? You're accepting this much love, but someone's trying to pour this much love into you, you will only accept the amount of love from them that you give to yourself. So even though they want to give you this amount of love because this is how much they love themselves, you're only going to accept the amount of love that you give to yourself from them. And so actually, if you're low, you're pretty low on here, right? If you're like down here and they want to love you from up here with all of their might, soul, but you're living in fear, you're living in scarcity mindset, you're feeling pessimistic about love because it hurt you. You have a really bad definition on what love is and what it means and how love is. Love sucks. It hurts. It's all of these things that it's really not. Then what happens is your level of love is really low. And when they try to love you, you won't let them love you more than what you love yourself. So like ultimately, you got to understand that it's really hard for people to accept love from other people when they can't seem to love themselves. And that's why in my book, The Big Three, I talked about, how important it is to reestablish and rebuild that relationship and connection with yourself so that you can experience a greater amount of love in your life. And so like imagine, ideally, imagine waking up each and every single day feeling just unworthy of love. Every mistake you've ever made plays on this loop, convincing you that you are simply not enough. The critical inner voice seems to dominate every thought, creating habits of self-blame. And then one day you decide to try something new. You try something different. You begin speaking to yourself as if you were your best friend with more kindness, empathy, and grace. And over time, your inner critic's voice begins to fade, replaced by self-compassion. You begin to feel more worthy of love, both from yourself and others. So what you need to understand is a simple key concept is that the relationship you have with yourself sets the foundation for every other relationship that you have in your life. And the way that you are constantly treating yourself teaches other people how to treat you. And if you're treating yourself with a low level of self love, you're going to accept only a low level of love from someone else, which makes them feel as if they're not enough because no matter how much love they give to you, it's never enough for you because your love that you're giving yourself is still not enough. So I need you to open your heart up. I need you to start a journal where you track moments of just negative self-talk. I don't even care if you wear, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but at the beginning of my personal development journey, I oftentimes wore a bracelet. It was a rubber band. And anytime that I would talk negatively about myself or toward myself or had a negative thought, I would snap the band, so it like caused a little bit of a physical pain sensation. And every time I made a mistake of talking poorly about myself, I snapped the band to kind of re-trigger and retrain my mind to then replace that negative thought with something more positive. So, what I need you to just do is the first step to changing anything is the awareness that you have to change. So, if you're sucking in your love life, like your love life sucks, like you're not being able to accept the amount of love that you wish that you could because you're fearful of it and you have a poor definition of love, then ultimately what you need to really begin to focus on is just becoming more aware of the negative self-talk that's determining the reality, the world, the love life, the relationship that you're currently living in. So after each entry that you put into your journal or however you want to do it, speak it into your phone. If you have your cell phone, just put it into the voice notes and literally just speak through it. But after each entry, I need you to challenge yourself to write down a more compassionate and understanding response. This simple shift in your internal dialogue will absolutely help you to cultivate more self-love, making it a lot easier to attract healthier relationships. Because remember, I always preach this time and time again. If you've been around a while now, you'll understand that I believe that you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So if you want to attract healthier love and healthier relationships, you need a healthier relationship within yourself. So the first step here when it comes to communication, you got to master the art of self-talk and to communicate effectively toward yourself so it doesn't tear you down, because you can only give what you have. And so you can fake it for some time, but eventually your true colors are going to come out and you're going to realize that you're a poor communicator and you hate everything and hate everyone because you hate yourself. Okay. Number two, the big idea is there's a gift of being heard. There's a very strong and powerful when it comes to communication, how important it is for you to be and feel heard. How active listening can heal relationships. The key concept here, my friend, is simply this. We all crave to be heard. But often in conversations, we focus more on what we'll say next than what we're truly trying to listen to. Now, I'm on a podcast on a weekly basis, whether it be my own or on the Brian Hess Show, and I have to do a lot of active listening there. And ultimately, I also think that this is pretty cool. Let me see if I can find him real quick. If you're watching this, or even if you're not, I'm going to pull up a guy by the name of Steve. His name's Steve from Blue's Clues. Hi out there, it's me, Steve. I grew up on Blue's Clues, okay? And he is a great example of active listening. It was such a nostalgic moment when his TikTok came up, and he's such an amazing active listener. So if you don't know Steve, you got to learn Steve and listen to him. But I'm going to play this for you. I hope that you can see it okay. But this is what I mean by active listening. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be a great communicator, you need to learn how to be a great listener. And so this is what great listening looks like and sounds like.
Hello. What's going on? How are you? What's new? Uh-huh. just wanted to check in. You look great. Hello.
Man, does it feel good to be listened to? Does it feel good to be heard? You know, I need you to think of a time when you were opening up to someone, but instead of listening, they hijacked the conversation to share their own story. You probably felt dismissed. You probably felt not listened to, perhaps even more alone than before. Now, contrast that with someone who actively listens without judgment, without interruptions, just pure understanding, just being there present with them and with you. In those moments, you felt deeply seen and valued. You know, Steve demonstrated there in that quick TikTok reel how to be a good active listener. It's really just being intentional. It's the way that he tilts his head. It's the way that he looks away to look back at you. It's the way that he says a very little, but you felt very heard. Yeah, so active listening is you're not trying to chase what you're going to say next. You're just going to allow yourself to be and to listen, to be an active listener. So in your next conversation, particularly with, someone that you love, you need to just focus solely on what they're saying. Practice active listening. Try not to chase the next thought that you want to think and say in return to that, like a match in ping pong. Just allow yourself to take it all in. That is going to help you. So remember, number one is the power of self-talk. Number two is helping you to become a more active listener. Number three is finding your voice. And, assertive communication builds trust is really what it does. So when it comes to finding your voice, many of us either hold back our feelings to avoid conflict or our truth to avoid conflict or respond aggressively in fear of being unheard. Neither of these approaches, my friends, have ever worked in fostering a healthy marriage in my own life. And let me tell you, it's not going to help you in your love life. Picture a couple on the brink of breaking up, right? You might experience this. One partner feels silenced, afraid that expressing their needs will lead to conflict, and over time, the unspoken frustration built, turning small disagreements into major issues. But when they learn to assert their needs kindly, using I statements rather than accusing someone and accusations, something begins to shift, right? Something begins to shift. When you take it from, when you allow yourself to just start to assert their needs and your needs more kindly, it will help you to cultivate healthier communication and build a lot more trust a lot more quickly. So what I want you to understand here is practice using I statements in your conversation instead of blaming. You don't want to point the finger at them. Like, you never listen to me. I try and you make me feel unheard. You do this, you never do that. If it's about them, then the communication is going to be received in a manner that's going to hurt the relationship and cause you guys to break apart and stop allowing you guys to see that you guys ultimately want the same thing. You want the same thing, right? I always tell my wife this because it's not like we don't get in arguments or we don't have moments of heated debate. But I always say, like, is it me versus you right now? Or is it us versus the problem? Is it the marriage versus the problem? Because if it's you versus me and you just want to let off a steam because I'm here in your presence and I'm the one that has to deal with it, then let me know so that I know how to respond. But if we actually have a problem, then, and we both want to stay in a happy and healthy marriage, honey, then you got to understand that it's us versus the marriage. It's not me versus you. I want to get through this so that we can move back into a healthy communication, healthy conversation, and have a healthier marriage. So the next big idea here that I really want to talk about is just like understanding that you oftentimes struggle in your relationships because you don't know how to handle disagreements with grace. Brian Hess, the founder of the Payment Group, the founder of One Team Media, the founder of TCS, is a guy who practices grace on a daily basis. I've had him on the show a couple of times, and I think he's a very a graceful person. He gives a lot of grace to people's mistakes when he doesn't necessarily have to, and he still does. Conflict in relationships are inevitable. Like I said, my wife and I have conflict, and it's not that it's unhealthy. It's actually rather healthy. So conflict in relationships, my friends, are, it's inevitable. It's a part of it. And I wasn't actually raised that way, because anytime my parents had conflict in their marriage, it oftentimes led to verbal and physical violence and or abuse. And therefore, I used to run away from conflict and thinking that if I were to experience that conflict with my intimate partner, that the relationship was going to fail, I was going to flee and shut down. But then I realize that it can either be a great tool for growth or a wedge that drives us apart. And so the key lies in how you handle it. And so as a leader within my own home, I've decided to lead with more heart and less hurt. And I know that's easier said than done. However, it's still a conscious choice of awareness saying that, hey, I do not want this marriage to end up, or this conversation to be the very wedge that drives us apart, that leads into a poor communicated marriage or, something worse. So here's the idea: is imagine a couple just mid-argument going back and forth with voices raised and hurtful words thrown around like weapons of damage and mass destruction. It feels like the relationship is unraveling into this massive debate and tornado of hate and no longer love. But, I want you to understand, what if instead of reacting impulsively to your emotional poise, or therefore lack of, one partner decides to pause, takes a deep breath, and approaches the situation calmly. See, what I do in my controversial moments or my moments of conflict with my wife is, like I just mentioned, is I talk to her in a manner that helps us remind each other, are we on the same team or are we not? Is it me versus you, or is it the marriage versus the problem? Because if it's the marriage versus problem, we can get through this. But if it's me versus you, no one's going to win. And I'm going to end up on the couch, and we're not going to talk the rest of the night until I come up and sit us down to hold a conversation, to then love on each other and being like, I'm so sorry, I can't go to bed angry, and move through it. Because that happens in marriage. So instead of being the person who is so reactive, be more proactive the next time a conflict happens by just allowing yourself to relax the body, breathe deeply, and approach the situation more calmly. Because the simple truth is that you can turn any conflict into, an opportunity for deeper understanding and connection, rather than further into the division and into the wedge. Okay? So ultimately, my friends, today is a day where you begin to evaluate why your relationship is failing. Oftentimes, most relationships fail because the communication just simply sucks. They're not communicating, and they're not speaking up, and they're not sharing the truth, and they're not being vocal, and they're just using a bunch of assumptions. And you should know to do this. You should know me by now. No, I don't know you by now. I've been with my wife for 8 years, and I still don't know her. Heck, I get it mostly wrong anyway, but she has the grace to give me to mess up, because I'm not a perfect human, and I'm learning and she's learning, and we have to give that grace to each other. But ultimately, if you're struggling in your love life, it's because ultimately you're probably struggling with the relationship that you have with yourself, because that relationship that you have with yourself, it stems and it's the foundational piece to every other relationship. So the way that you talk to yourself will increase or decrease your connection and love towards someone else. So once again, utilize your self-love and your self-talk to increase your self-love so that you can accept more self-love. And then, what we talked about, another thing was basically allowing yourself to be an active listener, like we talked about with Steve, and then finding your voice is really important. So instead of basically saying, you did this, you did that, you never listen to me, you're going to start saying, like, I feel unheard when this happens. I feel like you're attacking me, but if you're not, please let me know and communicate that to me, because I'm reading it this way, right? You're not pointing the finger at them, you're taking responsibility for your own action. And then, ultimately, just understand that conflict is a bridge to connection. Conflict is inevitable in relationships. But you can either use it for growth, or you can use it as a wedge that drives you apart. And what decides that is you. Who decides that is you? Is the leader of your home, or the one that's most aware? The one that is most aware is the most responsible. So once again, your partner might not know this because they're not listening to this. So therefore, you are the one that's most responsible, my friend. So understand that you can begin to transform your love life through your communication. Improving the way you communicate, both with yourself and others, has the high chance and has the power to change the entire quality of your love life. Whether it's through cultivating kind self talk, actively listening, or navigating conflict with compassion, these habits will ultimately help you to communicate from a place of love and not fear. My friend, I just hope that you found this podcast helpful, supportive, encouraging, and uplifting. And if you did, please share it out with 1, 2, or 3 of your friends. And be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcast at, because I want to come to you on a weekly basis to help you overcome the obstacles that are stopping you from experiencing more love, more joy, more happiness in your life and relationships. But ultimately, understand that if you want more happiness in your life, you need to create happier relationships, because studies show that the key to your happiness is found in relationships and in nothing else. And there's so much research and science backed behind that. And we are meant to connect, but we got to learn how to connect. We got to learn how to communicate. The reason why there's such division in this world is because we're not communicating. We're not actively listening. We're oftentimes acting rather than being proactive. And you know this to be true. And I want to oftentimes say, if you found this like, well, no crap, Tyler, well, let me tell you, the common sense isn't always common practice. Therefore, just because you think you know it doesn't mean that you're doing it. Two separate things. Once again, my dear friends, my name is Tylerjoestratton. This is Honey, I'm Home.